In this video, we are talking about two major updates. The first one is the Bitcoin Cardano bridge, which I made a video a couple of weeks ago. And ever since then, people have been asking, when is it actually happening? So we're going to talk about an update regarding that. The second will be an update regarding what the Cardano Foundation responded about the Treasury proposal almost being rejected that was supposed to fund the Cardano Summit 2026 and the token 2049. And they didn't just tweet about it. I mean, they gave us a whole Treasury proposal FAQ answering all the major questions people have been asking for the past few days. So we're going to talk about both of these things, and I think it's going to be a very interesting video. So first of all, let's talk about the Bitcoin Cardano bridge. A couple of weeks ago, I made a video and I said that Bitcoin liquidity moving towards Cardano will be one of the biggest catalysts that is going to grow Cardano's TVL. It is going to improve Cardano's, on-chain volume, which will eventually benefit all of the D apps, because Cardano's DeFi and all the DeFi protocols and applications, they're basically going to host this Bitcoin liquidity that is going to flow towards Cardano, which it can be millions of dollars or even billions of dollars. Like I said before, it is one of the biggest catalysts if executed properly. And ever since then, people have been asking, when is it actually happening? Because this whole talk of Bitcoin liquidity moving towards Cardano's DeFi, this has been flowing around for not just months, but years. For the first time, we are actually getting very close to it. So Fluid Tokens, they announced that on Wednesday, which is this very day, you'll be able to access the Cardano Bitcoin bridge we call Bifrost on BTC testnet, and it is going to happen on 4 p.m. UTC. So by the time that the video is live, I think that this testnet will also be live. Now, the testnet means that we are very close to mainnet. Now, depending on how the testnet goes, if the testnet is very successful, users, of course, are going to stress test this bridge. And if there are no problems, I think we're going to have mainnet in just a couple of weeks. And if there are some problems, it can maybe take a couple of months. But there won't be much time between the testnet and the mainnet. So we can expect the mainnet to happen very, very soon. So all of that talks about Bitcoin liquidity moving to Cardano DeFi, that will start pretty soon. And we'll have to see how it actually turns out, because theoretically, it sounds really awesome. So here's an update regarding that. The testnet for the bridge is going live today. Now, let's move towards what happened, what Cardano Foundation responded. So for those of you guys who don't know what happened, almost a week ago, Cardano Foundation and Emergo submitted a proposal to withdraw almost $3.5 million from the ADA Treasury to fund Cardano Summit 2026 and Token 2049, which is a proposal they gave last year, which D-Reps accepted, and they, funded the Cardano Summit 2025. But this time it changed, because last time they asked for almost $1.2 to $1.4 million. Now they're asking for $3.5 million at a time when the price of ADA has fallen drastically. So the reps responded accordingly. Majority started rejecting the proposal, saying that maybe Cardano Foundation and Emergo both are the developing and supporting entities around Cardano. They should fund these events on their own, which is what they have been doing, post Voltaire era. And people have been questioning, why have you doubled the budget? And there has been a lot of questions. A few days passed and Cardano Foundation finally responded. So what they said is, over the past few days, we have been absorbing all of the feedback regarding the Cardano Summit 2026 and Token 2049 Treasury proposal. As many of you pointed out, the proposal for 2026 is bigger, bolder, and consequently more expensive than for 2025. This shift was much debated, but ultimately won out because we want to send a message. No matter the circumstances, Cardano is open for business. Of course, the D-Reps did not agree with this message. We view this as an anti-cyclic investment to support the Cardano vision that the community voted for last year. But we knew this would raise differing opinions in the market. And if D-Reps decide against it, we will refocus our efforts and push on. But we must be clear that there will be no modified Cardano Summit proposal. There simply isn't time on the calendar to re-engineer an event of this size. One of the things that people said is maybe you should not, you should have separate proposal for Cardano Summit 2026 and the token 2049, because maybe DRAPs will agree for the token 2049 because it will cost less, since they're not essentially organizing it. They can get some boosts over there, so they will have representation in the token 2049. So they asked for separate proposals, but in this case they clarified that there will be no modified version of this proposal. It's either it's Cardano Summit 2026 and token 2049, or it's none of it. Now, let's move forward towards the FAQ. Here they explain the reason why they increased the budget. They're saying 2.8 million, but what they asked for was almost 14 million ADA, which at current price, which is at around, let's say 25 cents, that is about 3.5 million. So I'm not sure where they're getting this 2.8 million number from. But anyways, regardless of that, the budget has doubled. And they're justifying this increase in budget is because last year for Cardano Summit 2025, they used revenue of the previous year for it. So they used the previous year's budget, and they used 1.2 or 1.4 million dollar from the Treasury. And since it was in Berlin, which it cost less there, and to them Singapore cost more, they have to pay more for the vendors, and that's why they increased the budget. And then they explained why they're combining the Summit and the token 2049, because they want to push in the APAC region, in the Asia region. And they explain why Singapore for this event. Again, that's something that I explained in the previous video, because the token 2049 event was supposed to happen in Dubai, but because of the Iran and US war, they moved that from Dubai to Singapore. And you also have this Formula racing event there. So it's supposed to be a pretty good time in Singapore to have these events over there. And they explained what happens to the unused funds. So if the events are canceled, the amount goes back into Treasury. If there are unused funds, they go back into the Treasury, and the revenue that they are going to generate from this, it will be used for the next year's event. Now here's what people have been asking for, that why should the Treasury fund the Cardano Summit and not the Cardano Foundation, not Emergo? With Voltaire and the decentralized ecosystem, the community, DRAPs, and funding entities are all responsible for advancing Cardano together. 2024 marked the last summit where funding entities, that is Cardano Foundation, Emergo, Intersect, and all the other input, output, global, and so forth, these entities sponsored the flagship event directly. For 2025, a Treasury proposal was agreed as being the way to proceed for the ecosystem. So kind of like in 2025, when there was a Treasury proposal to have the Cardano Summit and DRAPs did agree with it, it kind of set a precedent that all the future events will be on the expense of the Treasury. And that's why they are not paying for it anymore like they used to do before, in 2024 and before that. Ever since 2024, we have been clear on the fact that Cardano Foundation cannot absorb more than the usual operational overhead of the summit, as is foreseen by this proposal. So now that the proposal is going to be rejected, there will be no Cardano Summit 2026, which is going to be a pretty bad thing, because as one of the users highlighted, you announced the summit last year and a lot of people bought non-refundable flights and hotels. Turning around now and basically saying either pay up and there's no summit really isn't fair towards your community, which of course is pretty unfair. Now here's the sad part. On one end, they are justifying why Cardano Summit and Token 2049 are really important events, and they will benefit Cardano, they will benefit ERA, and eventually it will benefit the users. So on one end, they are justifying how important and significant it is. But on the other hand, if Treasury won't fund it, they won't do it. I think that if they believe these events are so important, which I do believe that they do have some benefit, then they should do it on their own, even if the proposal is rejected. But I think they have made themselves very clear that they won't do it. So yeah, that is the update regarding the Cardano and the Cardano Bitcoin bridge and about the Cardano Summit 2026. So it won't happen simply. So that's it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next video shortly. So stay tuned.